What's your pick for the most depressing scientific development? Story 1. The Theory of Special Relativity. The speed of light is an absolute limit for anything as large as ourselves. It greatly reduces the possibility that our species will ever have the opportunity to expand its horizons and explore space. Here, we have a degree in physics, not astronomy. Edit. Just to clarify, I am well informed about the loopholes that wormholes and the Alcubierre drive offer. Although my knowledge of wormholes is limited, I am quite sure that we have not seen any in nature. Even with the latest advancements, the energy expenditure of the Alcubierre drive is utterly absurd. Another commenter brought up the fact that it's extremely energy expensive to accelerate a ship to a point where time dilation becomes significant. But it doesn't rule out the possibility that we could do things someday. The likelihood, nevertheless, is much reduced. Story 2. You can use a product to permanently remove hair from certain areas such as your legs, privates, pits, etc. Shaving and razor firms bought out the creator, so now I have to take an extra 5 minutes in the shower every few days. Screw capitalism sometimes. Edit. I'm sorry, but I'm currently unable to locate a source for this, despite numerous requests for one. This entertaining tidbit of information has stuck with me ever since my uncle, who is quite prominent in the Australian pharmaceutical industry, told me about it at least 10 years ago. Later today, I will link to the story if I can locate it. I only have a foggy memory of being shown it. Story 3. I investigated the molecular responses that accompany falling in and out of love when I was 15 years old by searching Google. Being young and unable to really comprehend the idea that the chemicals could alter at any moment devastated me for a while. But as I matured, I began to feel much better. While you and others may not be able to influence their feelings, they do have complete agency over how they process and interpret information, just like any other fully developed human being. Story 4. Our state-of-the-art armament for use in battle. I see that it makes soldiers less likely to die in battle, but it also encourages civilians to start pointless conflicts, even if most of them will never witness combat firsthand. Furthermore, it is frustrating for everyone when an irresponsible organization, I'm addressing you, Kim, obtains weapons that could cause harm. Thus, it's not without its drawbacks. This really gets to the heart of one of the biggest paradoxes of modern warfare. The better and safer we make weapons, the easier it becomes for people far from the battlefield to treat war like a chess game instead of a human catastrophe. Advanced armaments undeniably protect soldiers in combat, but at the same time, they can give political leaders and powerful groups a false sense of security, making it easier to start conflicts they'll never personally experience. It's like the human cost becomes abstract when you're behind a screen or holding all the power. Story 5. Why haven't we found a way to treat the common cold yet? The continued reliance on fossil fuels begs the question, why? I don't understand why some regions of the world have to deal with the problem of dirty water while other regions have access to potable water. When there is more than enough food in Europe to feed everyone, why do many still go hungry? Furthermore, why the heck are there distinct online regions? For what reason is it that it's not available in your country when I try to see some videos on YouTube? Ignore science. As far as I'm concerned, the driving forces behind all of those things are monetary in nature, not scientific. The medical necessity of treating a typical cold is low. An infection with a rhinovirus usually resolves on its own. Nevertheless, certain antivirals have the potential to reduce the length of time that symptoms last. Story 6. Spending on diabetes and its complications is projected to more than quadruple in the next quarter of a century. Between 2009 and 2034, the number of people with diagnosed and undiagnosed diabetes will increase from 23.7 million to 44.1 million. The obesity distribution in the population without diabetes will remain stable over time, with 65% of individuals of the population being overweight or obese. During the same period, annual diabetes-related spending is expected to increase from $113 billion to $336 billion, $2007. For the Medicare-eligible population, the diabetes population is expected to rise from 8.2 million in 2009 to 14.6 million in 2034. Associated spending is estimated to rise from $45 billion to $171 billion. Story 7. While some may not see this as a scientific advancement, it has significant implications for agriculture. In comparison to tribes whose primary food source was plants, hunter-gatherer societies tended to be bigger and healthier. Actually, there are some who believe that the evolution of larger brains in primates was facilitated by their preference for meat. Furthermore, infectious diseases, social hierarchy, and conflict were all significantly less common in hunter-gatherer communities. Concerning the first two, the reasoning is straightforward. Fighting, or looking down on your less fortunate cousin, was more likely if you owned the greatest acreage and, by extension, the most crops. Conflict opportunities also increased as populations grew. You didn't experience the huge human die-offs that later civilizations witnessed, yet life expectancy was terrible and infant mortality was extremely high. A further benefit of these cultures was that they had gender parity. In the event that their husbands were unsuccessful hunters, the wives would simply leave them. Small numbers and the gathering aspect of hunter-gatherer communities are likely to blame for this. Story 8. That there is no way for us to ever fully comprehend one another, in both oral and written forms of expression. We each have our own distinct version of anything we say since there are so many variables. Take the most basic sentence I can think of. The cat meowed. In this case, there are a plethora of possible interpretations depending on the speaker. I can't find the cat. Might you please tell me which feline this is? Very similar to what the feline made. The speaker will be describing something that no one listening can possibly fathom. It's discouraging because we can't possibly have a common understanding. You are completely misunderstood. This is such a beautifully frustrating truth about being human. Language is imperfect. Even with the simplest phrase, the cat meowed. You're right. There's a universe of interpretation baked into those three words: tone, context, personal experience. Every listener reconstructs their own version of what was meant. No two people ever hear the same sentence the same way. It's kind of tragic when you think about it. No matter how much we talk, write, or explain, perfect understanding between two people is impossible. There will always be a gap. Story 9. Some time ago, I heard of a group of biologists who were really pumped up about the possibility of synthesizing a cancer-causing virus. They got down to business on it, but then a colleague of theirs heard about it and planned an ethics lecture for the whole staff, in which he warned that the notion was risky. You shouldn't do something simply because it's possible. They were taken aback by what they had almost accomplished and halted the investigation once they heard it stated that way. Story 10. Thomas Miggley Jr., who caused more harm to the environment than any other living thing, is the subject of this gloomy scientific article. Miggley, born in 1889, earned a doctorate in engineering from Cornell University. He became a member of Charles Kettering's Dayton, Ohio lab in 1916. To power home lighting systems on farms, Kettering was peddling a compact kerosene engine. The sound was dreadful. Fuel dyed red might increase heat absorption and decrease knocking, according to Miggley's hypothesis. That was physics at its worst. He found that adding iodine to the kerosene reduced the knock. A more effective anti-knock ingredient was the goal of Miggley's search. His initial search was a fruitless squandering of time. After that, he methodically started going through the elements in the periodic table. He experimented with TETL, tetraethyl lead, for 6 years before he discovered its efficacy. Consequently, ethanol fuel spread across the United States. Its toxicity was an immediate concern that persisted for the next 60 years. Miggley took part in a news conference on October 30th, 1924, to show how TEL seemed to be safe. He demonstrated that he could do the experiment daily without experiencing any side effects by pouring TEL over his palms, placing a bottle up his nose, and inhaling the chemical's vapor for 60 seconds. Story 11. I take quantum immortality as my guess. According to the many worlds theory of quantum mechanics, there are an infinite number of possibilities for our universe's offshoots, and the odds of your survival in any one of them are non-zero. Also, since you can't really die, your mind sees a continuous stream of reality in which you're constantly breathing. What a fantastic idea! Except that being alive isn't synonymous with being happy. Actually, there are far more ways to feel bad than good, so it's likely that your future will be filled with even more suffering. Your loved ones will pass away. Despite beating the disease, you will be permanently disabled. Perpetual agony and distress await you. Also, don't think a gunshot will end it. This is the reality in which the weapon is useless. Alternatively, it may do you harm without killing you. Even if you accidentally blow out your own eyes, your consciousness will stay intact. Survive at all costs, my friend. You might become completely alone, blind, deaf, and unable to move. Yet by some twist of fate, you'll always be able to face the world and all its misery for another day. You will be the last human on this planet when the end of the world comes. Your awareness manages to withstand inhospitable conditions, be it extreme heat or cold, harm, illness, cancer, amputation, gunshot wounds, poison, ice, or fire. Your body finds a way to adapt, so you'll still be around when Earth becomes inhospitable. I don't know how you'll make it through the day when the sun burns everything to ash, but you'll be here. Perhaps you undergo a complete metamorphosis. One of Jupiter's moons could be your final destination. In the long run, even the most outlandish ideas can become a reality. Story 13. The heat death of the universe is, in common parlance, one of the most discouraging scientific notions. According to this hypothesis, the cosmos will eventually entropy maximize, meaning that all energy is distributed uniformly and there is no thermodynamic free energy left to accomplish work. Under this scenario, the cosmos will turn into a frigid, black, and lifeless wasteland as stars explode and galaxies separate. One additional possibility is the Fermi paradox, which asks why, considering the size of the universe and the likelihood of alien life, we haven't found any evidence of it. Worryingly, this could mean that sentient life is extremely rare, or that most civilizations collapse before they can establish contact with other worlds, both of which would mean that the future of humanity in space is not looking good. Both hypotheses make one feel existentially threatened by the future of the cosmos and their own place in it. Story 14. One of the laws of thermodynamics must apply here. The one that states the entropy of the universe is increasing. You are then free to investigate the various mathematical expressions of this at your leisure. Crap falls apart, to use a colloquial expression. Metals rust. Over time, wood will decay. As time passes, our physical forms decompose into dust. Everything breaks down. Everything collapses. A glass is statistically more likely to be broken than intact since there are an endless number of ways it might be broken. It is feasible to temporarily, locally reduce entropy, but doing so demands a substantial and, at times, continual energy input. Heat, the most chaotic and unpredictable energy form, is the end result of converting that energy. There is a general trend towards chaos in the cosmos. It will be there nonetheless. Story 15. Depending on your point of view, uncertainty and incompleteness can be either liberating or depressing. Danger. It is impossible to precisely quantify every aspect of an item. We can learn less about some characteristics while our knowledge of others grows. The principle of uncertainty by Heisenberg describes this. Incompleteness. We are unable to provide proof for every possible truth. To many, Gödel's incompleteness theorems prove that there can be no universally accepted set of mathematical axioms. According to the first incompleteness theorem, no well-established set of axioms whose theorems can be enumerated using a practical method, that is, an algorithm, can prove every truth of the natural number system. True but unprovable propositions regarding the natural numbers will always exist in any such consistent formal system. Story 16. In June 2019, I finally grasped the difference between the galactic plane in the summer sky and the true plane of orbiting planets. This is 3 months after you first questioned me here. I only got my answer today. After that, I found out that the orbitals were helicoid. Learn about the solar system in 2D, 3D, and 4D on YouTube. Then I went on to describe the optical illusion that occurs during a solar eclipse, and I reviewed the phenomenon by explaining how the Earth passes behind the Moon and the limitations of light transmission. Since the light is received with a delay, it gives the impression of light curvature and, by extension, a fictitious spacetime. It saddens me that Einstein's theory of relativity is unfinished. Story 17. Traditional antibiotic resistant microorganisms are on the rise. Seeing how many antibiotics are prescribed without proper testing and how many patients who haven't seen a doctor in a month come into the pharmacy to refill their ABs makes me sick to my stomach as a pharmacy major. Alternatively, there's the patient who calls to get a refill for their son's Z-Pack, but he hasn't been to the doctor either. Fortunately, I was able to persuade her to take her son to the doctor. Many people are completely unaware of the nature and function of antibiotics. I get the impression that they consider it enchanted sweets. This is such an important and frustrating reality, and you captured it perfectly. Antibiotic resistance is one of those slow-moving disasters that doesn't make headlines every day, but is quietly reshaping the future of medicine. And so much of it comes down to misuse and misunderstanding. The way people treat antibiotics like some kind of magic candy is terrifying. Skipping doctor visits, reusing old prescriptions, demanding them for viral infections. It's not just ignorance, it's fuel for superbugs. Story 18. Every day, scientific evidence disproves the idea of free will. In my opinion, this is less of a scientific problem and more of a philosophical one. According to scientific consensus, you are confined to the necessities of life, the dictates of your genes, and the expectations of your society as you endure life on a small, inseparable rock in the midst of an enormous, incomprehensibly vast ocean. That is correct. Each of these is accurate. The mid-century existentialism pioneer Jean-Paul Sartre was a Hegelian thinker whose idea of freedom was rejected. According to his writings, the free will camp was seeking an act that was completely unfounded, which was the root of the free will versus determinism argument. Proponents of determinism place an emphasis on enumerating the ways in which external factors impose rigid constraints on an individual's choices. The very essence of existence is a rejection, which is why I agree with Sartre and Hegel that freedom is defined as such. Though it's true that living things are made possible by chemical and physical laws, the fact that a life exists is like a fold in the system that absorbs and consumes energy. It negates the status quo of motionless physical bodies interacting in space. When a living form reaches a certain degree of complexity, it undergoes a second fold in which it develops self-awareness and the ability to act on or ignore its desires. To be free is to have a knowledge of one's own thinking, of other things' thinking, and of how to treat these things in relation to one's own ideas, feelings, and life in general. This awareness is the bedrock of ethics. So long as our behaviors are the result of a combination of our genes, our experiences, and our upbringing, then it makes no difference if I am said to be the cause of my actions. Two sides of the same coin. Story 19. I think the most important thing is that we're only now beginning to grasp the irreversibility of biodiversity collapse and mass extinction. Species are disappearing at a rate that is 100 to 1,000 times faster than the natural rate, according to scientific studies conducted in the past 20 years, such as Planetary Boundary Study and IPBES reports. Coral reefs, old-growth forests, and insect populations are just a few examples of ecosystems that have already passed critical mass. Many systems and species will still perish even if we stop the harm right now due to lag effects. Not only do these changes endanger animals, but they also pose a threat to human health, climate stability, and food security. Science is revealing the problem with growing clarity, but it is also revealing how tight the window for reversing it has become, which is worrying. It's as if you're witnessing a train wreck unfold in slow motion, meticulously laid out in scholarly articles. What about some other contenders for the most discouraging scientific advancement? Would you be interested in hearing about them, such as those pertaining to artificial intelligence, the cosmos, or neuroscience? Story 20. The universe will come to an end in a state of heat death, and everything will lose its significance. The sciences of cosmology and physics. What the scientific community discovered. The second rule of thermodynamics demonstrates that the cosmos is moving in the direction of highest possible entropy. At some point in the far future, stars will cease to exist, black holes will dissipate, and everything will be icy, dark, and motionless. Everything, including love, knowledge, and art, will eventually be lost, regardless of how evolved civilization grows. This is the reason why it is depressing. It is a reminder that everything we accomplish is, from a cosmological perspective, impermanent. This is an extra sting. Story 21. The feedback loops for climate change are beginning to form. In spite of the fact that people have stopped releasing carbon dioxide, The melting of permafrost, the collapse of ice sheets, and the death of forests can all contribute to self-reinforcing warming. The fact that this is not simply about hotter summers is what makes it depressing. It is the prospect that we have already locked ourselves into a planet that is profoundly different and more hostile, one that we are no longer able to manage. Story 22. In the field of neuroscience and cognitive research, we may never have a complete understanding of ourselves. This is referred to as the limits of consciousness. The findings of the scientific community indicate that although decades of research on the brain have made progress, the hard problem of consciousness, the question of why subjective experience exists, has not been answered. The fact that it raises the prospect that no matter how far science progresses, it is possible that we will never completely know why we exist or what self is one of the reasons why it is melancholy. There is a possibility that we are intricate biological devices that believe they are more than that. This is one of the most haunting ideas in science, that the hard problem of consciousness might be unsolvable, and that we may never truly understand the thing that makes us us. Despite all the brain scans, neuron maps, and decades of breakthroughs, we still can't explain why there is an inner experience. Why does all that electrical activity feel like something from the inside? Why is there a me watching it all happen? Story 23. There is now evidence of microplastics in our blood and organs. Medical and environmental science are the fields of study. According to the findings of scientific research, microplastics have been discovered in human blood, lungs, and even placentas since the year 2022. Particles like this have the potential to disrupt hormones, contain dangerous compounds, and have health impacts that may last a lifetime. An explanation for why this is disheartening is that our species has had such a significant impact on the planet that synthetic waste has become ingrained in our own DNA. Story 24. Artificial intelligence may surpass us, and we may not even realize it until it is too late. Machine learning systems are already developing information and methods that humans do not completely comprehend, according to the findings of the scientific community. Many experts in the field of artificial intelligence acknowledge that we do not have a clear framework to regulate something that is smarter than us. It is disheartening because even in the best-case scenario, in which there are no killer robots, our species has the potential to lose control of its own future, simply due to the fact that we have constructed something that we are unable to keep up with. Story 25. Civilization's susceptibility to collapse. As a result of scientific research, modern civilization is dependent on fragile global systems that are strongly tied to one another, such as energy grids, food supply chains, and the internet. The breakdown of these systems might occur much more quickly than humans are able to fix them, and could be caused by a large-scale cyber attack, solar storm, or global pandemic. The scientific evidence demonstrates that we have constructed a structure that is both complicated and fragile. Stability might be nothing more than an illusion.